Today I've been asked to talk about working leaf tallies over a half stitch shape. Now there are two different approaches to this. This one is a motif that you find in a lot of Bedfordshire with 4 overlaid leaf tallies that meet in the middle, and then sometimes you get this bigger shape with more overlaid leaves, and there are slightly different techniques involved, so I will talk about both of them on this video. I'm going to start on the smaller one. That's the easier one to approach, but once you've got the techniques, it doesn't matter how big or complicated the shape is, you can use the same techniques for it. Now generally these shapes will have plaits coming into the top, or if not you have to put pairs on to get the half stitch shape started. So I'm going to pretend this is the first plait coming in, and there's also another plait coming in here. So there will be 2 pairs on each of these pins to start off with. And we're going to work a few rows of half stitch before we get to the leaf tallies. So I'm going to start on the right hand side and come across in half stitch to this one. Now here there probably wouldn't be a plait, there might be one coming in here but there isn't at this one. So I'm going to add a pair to make the half stitch a little bit more dense. And I'm just going to do a twist, an extra twist around the pin on this one. Sometimes you could do a double half stitch on a shape, it does make it a little bit firmer. And again this side, probably not one coming in, so I'm going to add another one. I want the half stitch to be a reasonable density. And just another twist on the pin. Now the next time I come across we're going to be about level with the leaves, so there may be another plait coming in here, and so we'll take that one in. And you can see the density is about right. So I'm pretending these are coming in off another plait. I'm just treating them. Just get it twisted there. Just see what's happened there. Look, I put went astray when I put them on a temporary support pin. Now on the next row you've got to decide whether you need to actually add pairs for the leaf tallies, and sometimes you'll find you've got so many pairs in here that you can leave them out without adding, but in this case I like the density of the half stitch, I don't want to disrupt that, so I'm going to actually add pairs in. So I'll work across the point where I think they would be, and I think it's there. So I'm going to put the pin in and then I'll add 2 pairs onto that pin. An open formation, and then I'll just half stitch through them. And it will be the same on the next one as well. And again, looking at that position, it's about there. So pop the pin in and put the 2 pairs on. And again, half stitch through them. You need this join in there to make sure they're actually held in the half stitch before you do anything with them. And I can now let this temporary support pin down as they're held quite nicely. And now what I have to do is to find those 2 pairs again that are over the pin. And because I've now worked a half stitch, they won't necessarily be the same, well they won't be the same pair that you've just put in. I find the 2 that is closest to it, and I think I'm going to go for those 2, and I will just then lay them to the side of the pillow, and the same over this side, and lay them to the right of the pillow. Now you may want to put a little pin in just to make sure that you don't take them in, because it's so easy to do that. I just put a pin in there to hold them out of the direction of the work. And they're held back and I can't accidentally use them now. And then I'm going to continue the half stitch until you get to that centre hole. Now you just have to keep checking on the density of it if you've got nothing coming in or out of the half stitch, and if necessary put one pair in. But for demonstration purposes I think this is going to be okay. If I was working it in a piece I may want to put one more pair in. You're just trying to maintain that density of the half stitch. Now I think this is the row that I need to do the leaves on. I could have even done it on the previous row, but I think it'll be okay. So find the middle, and I've got an odd number, so that's why I probably would have put another pair in to make it even numbers, but we'll go with this. And you can see that the line I've come across is just above the pin, and this is the point you want to be at when you're doing the leaf tallies. Having trouble with my words this morning. So I bring that back in, making sure it's still around the pin, and work the leaf tally. The leaf tallies I have covered in another video, so I'm not going to take too long in working these. And I'll just work them as long as that centre pin. Now you could actually work these, some people work the leaves first. Generally these in Bedfordshire are worked from the right side of the lace. Some people I have known to work the leaves first and then work the half stitch over the top, so they can still turn the piece of lace over. It's not necessary, it just works quite well this way. And when you've made the leaf long enough, put the pin in and tension it. Once you've worked the first one and put it around the pin, move it to one side, bring the pairs back in from the other side and work the second leaf tally. Starting with a cloth stitch each time and then doing the weaving. Now sometimes it calls for the leaves once you've done the crossing to be caught into the half stitch, but generally these lie completely on top. So once the leaves have worked, I'll do a windmill crossing, a 4-pair crossing, and then I will leave them out to take the half stitch down to the level where the leaves come back into it. Leave them to one side and again work them when they're ready to re-enter the half stitch. You can work them first, but if you move them to one side to work the half stitch, this risks the half stitch, the leaf tallies even, being distorted by the movement. So I do like to work them when they're ready to be secured. So I just place it over there just to secure it, hold it. You can shorten the threads then that you've lengthened for the weaving, and then once they're both supported, you can then work the windmill crossing. And the last move is after the pin. Take the pin out, put it back in, and there you have the completed windmill crossing. Now again, move them to one side. So that they're out of the way, and finish the half stitch to the level where they re-enter. And sometimes, like here, you'll find that one pinhole is higher than the other. This one will probably be done in the next row. This one is now ready to come back in. So I can work the leaf tally that is coming in at this point. This also makes it easier for the spacing if you get this one out of the way. So again, start with a cross stitch, do the weaving of the tally, and then you pop it over a pin and just work straight back through it. The little ones like this don't take too long to do. If you've got longer ones, they obviously take a little bit more time, and taking care to make nice leaves. And then put the pin in to secure it, tension it up, shorten your threads again, and you're ready to work across the other side. And then one more row to do that across the other side, and you can do your last leaf tally. Now this does put extra pairs into the half stitch, and you have to be aware of how you're going to get rid of them at the end, and this will depend very much on your pattern. Very often there are more plaits coming out than going in, and that is to accommodate it, or if not, you may need to make each plait a 3-pair plait. So here it's ready to go in. Bring this one through. Sometimes a little difficult not to get it tangled around the pins like I've done. And then you're ready to do the last tally. Pop the pin in again to support it, and then you can just work back through. Now quite often at this point you would have pairs leaving coming out for plaits, so I shall leave 2 pairs out there for the plait that would probably be coming out at this point, and work through to the other side. I haven't actually checked to see how many pairs I would have coming out. That one's probably a plait. And I've got 3 pins left, so let's have a look how many pairs we've got. That's 1, 2, 3. I've got equivalent to 4 plaits. So we would probably end up leaving more pairs out for a plait. This one I shall make a 3-pair plait. And if necessary you can make it a 4-pair plait and throw them out during the actual plait weaving. It's far easier to do it leaving the extra ones out in the plaits than it is to actually throw out in half stitch. It's most difficult and not very often very good looking. So there I've got 3 out at 2 of the plaits and 2 for the last one. And that goes down to a plait. Hope that one's been helpful. I shall just get the bobbins ready and do the second version shortly. Continuing on from the first half stitch with overlaid leaves. Sometimes you will come across this sort of shape in a design. Now, sometimes the angle it is worked in this manner, so you will start on a flat line and you'll have pairs coming in from the top with a plait, which will mean the plaits or the leaf tallies are worked in a vertical position, do a windmill crossing and then drop into the half stitch on the other side, and very often then there are pairs going out on plaits to feed into other parts of the design, and that's relatively straightforward in the same way as I worked the first one. However, occasionally you will get the shape and it is worked in a vertical manner. It's a narrower shape by doing that than if you've got the long rows going over in this manner, because they are quite long rows. But working it in a vertical position, if that's what the design calls for, is slightly harder. You will work it in exactly the same way with a half stitch at the top. You'll probably put a pair in, 2 pairs in for the leaf, and then it becomes a plait. And you'll also have the pairs coming across. Now these may come across that direction, drop down and come back and come down like that. But the problem is you've got to take the pairs back into the half stitch before you've reached the pin here. So I'm going to show you this manner of working, because this is the most tricky one. It doesn't appear it to start off with, but when you actually come to work it, it can be quite challenging. There is a very simple little easy trick to do that makes it less challenging there. So we're going to put the pairs on in exactly the same way, open formation, as if we've got them coming in from a plait. And very often at the top of a shape like this you will have several pairs coming in from each side to feed the shape. And again, if you haven't got the pairs you need, we just put them in as you need them. So I'm just going to get the shape going quite quickly, and then I'll show you what we do. Now here I'm not going to put one in, I'm just going to work across and probably put one pair in on the next row. You don't always have plaits coming in at the same position. I'll put one in here because it's thinner. And it all does vary according to the pattern that you're working. I have just drafted this shape just to show you how we go about it. It's not actually from a particular design, but just to show you the techniques. And in half stitch you do get down to the fun bits a bit quicker. I'll just do the next couple of rows off camera to save a bit of video time and come back to you when I'm ready to put the 2 pairs in for the leaf. So I've worked down as far as I'm ready to put the leaf pairs in. I've worked halfway across, I've worked out where the centre is, and I now put a pin in that hole and hang 2 pairs on it in exactly the same way as I did on the first overlaid leaves. And again, work through them. And as I did before, I will lay the 2 pairs back so that they're out of the way. They are secured in the half stitch now, so I can now lay them to the side, ready to work once I get to the next pairs put in. couple of rows to do with half stitch in between. And each time checking whether I'm at that position. And nearly there. Once more across and I think I'll be at the position to add 2 pairs in for the left hand leaf. And it's still getting wider, so I'm still adding pairs in at the side. I'm tending to add one in at most pinholes, but if you're working it in a piece you probably have a plait come in and then nothing. So it equates to the similar sort of number of pairs coming in. I can now see that I'm at the point where I can drop 2 pairs in for this leaf. And I have to decide whether I'm taking the leaf from the left to the right, which I will in this case because the pinhole is slightly higher there, and it's coming in on the next row on the left, on the right even. So I didn't put a pair in, did I? Yes I did. So I'm going to work through 2, and that is the point that I'm going to add the 2 pairs for the leaf tally. Exactly the same again, hang them on. I haven't got too many pairs in here. If it was very dense, you could just put the pin between the 2 passives and then leave 2 out. And that's perfectly acceptable. And looking at the pinhole spacing, I'm going to go all the way across and then I'm going to do the leaves, because on the next row it will want to come back in. But we haven't reached that pinhole. So what we have to do is to take the 2 leaf tallies, make the 2 leaves, do a windmill crossing, put the pin in, do the second leaf tally to the right, take that back in, but then when we come across on the next row we have to ease the pin up and let the worker go behind the pin that's already there. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to find the 2 for this leaf and I'm going to use those 2, and you can make the decision whether you want to do the left or the central one first. I'm going to do this one because it's to hand and ready. Just zoom out a little so you can see it. And as always with leaf tallies, make sure your threads are of the correct length to be able to control them, to be able to work them neatly. Now you'll notice, in contrast to the first one, I haven't got the half stitch there to lay it over yet, and this is why people find this one slightly more tricky. Because you do have to work it afterwards but still have it underneath. Again, my threads are managing to lengthen themselves without me doing that. Normally I wouldn't be working on a pillow quite as flat as this. It would be on an angle and that would help with the tensioning a little bit. But for the video I have to have it flat so you can actually see what I'm doing. And that does make the techniques somewhat more tricky occasionally, but we all suffer for our art and to bring it to you as an audience. Hopefully you'll find it beneficial. So I'm nearly there. Now these leaves are slightly longer than the first ones we did, so you've got to make them the right length, and a cloth stitch at the end and put the pin up. Now you can see there's going to be a gap between the leaf, and I've got to get that half stitch behind this when I work it. And then work the second one, which is going to do the windmill crossing with. And I'll just move the pillow a little bit so I can actually get in there. And then work the second leaf. And again, put that around the pin that will hold your windmill crossing once you've done it. But I always put it around to tension it and get it looking nice and neat before you actually start messing about, taking the pin out or anything else. So now we do a windmill crossing and put the pin back in. The one that is in the centre is going to plait down to the next leaf crossing, so I would always do that one first because that pulls it up nicely around the pin. And again, then it can be put to one side because it's going to be overlaid over the top of the half stitch. So that can go to one side, and you know you don't take it in then, and put a pin in to hold it out of the way. We're now going to work the third leaf tally, and I'll just do that quickly and then come back to you when it's ready to go in. I've now completed that third tally and I've got to decide at what position to put it in. So I'll bring these bobbins back round and work out where it's going to go, making sure I haven't got extra or lost twists in the meantime, which I seem to have lost a few here, which is a danger whenever you're pushing half stitch around. So you do need to be quite observant and make sure where it's going. And I think we'll drop it in there. So I'm going to put it between the two pairs as usual in the position where I want the pairs to go, and put the bobbins in position and just tension it up. Shorten my weaver thread again so I'm ready to work. And there's a bobbin escaping over the other side of the pillow. Sometimes you seem to be forever shortening bobbins. So now I'm going to work back across with my worker, but this worker is going to want to go behind that central pin. I'll work all the way across. And put the pin in. This pillow's sliding about a little bit today. I hope you can see all the shots I'm wanting to show you. And then all I'm going to do is put a pin in underneath it, lift the central pin out of the pillow, and let that weaver that's just come across slip the other side of the pin and place it back in. And this evens it up. I then need to decide if I'm going to do it again. I probably will, because that is in line with that one there. So I'll work across again, and again lift this central pin out of the pillow to allow the weaver to go behind it. And it just helps to tension it up and keep everything in place, but also lets you work the half stitch behind the pin, which is not something you would normally do. You can see it's just pulling and twisting that leaf a little, so you just have to pay a little bit of attention to get it nice and neat. I am just rushing it a little bit today just to show you the techniques. Again, pin it up. Once you've pinned it up and you tension it, you will see if it needs to actually go the other side of the pin. And actually on this occasion I think it's probably okay where it is. So I've only had to do that pin lifting once. You can decide to do it if you want, and again, just let me show you. So I put the pin in so that the threads stay on the pin that are the crossing, and then lift it the other side. It's a little bit fiddly. Yes, I think it's probably better actually. And sometimes again you can put it the other side of pairs as well to even the half stitch up. That's better. And it evens it up much more. So I hope that's been helpful, and you now understand how to work a vertical piece of half stitch with overlaid leaves, and also the half stitch circle. If it's been helpful, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and you'll hear lots of new videos coming soon. And let me know if there's anything you particularly want to see, and I'll add it onto the list for filming. Thanks for watching.